Hi, this is Taylor Otwell back with another Laravel screencast. In this screencast, I'd like to introduce you to Lumen, the latest member of the Laravel family. Lumen is the official micro framework of Laravel, and it's blazingly fast. It's a great way to write microservices or small APIs using the Laravel syntax you love, but with an extremely fast framework. So many times if you had your primary Laravel application, but you wanted to support it with some microservices or other supporting services, you had to reach for something like Silex or Slim and use a different syntax and not the same libraries you're used to. And sometimes, it requires quite a bit of extra work to get your database and cache and all that set up. With Lumen, you get the power of all of Laravel's convenient components. So Eloquent, database, caching, even Redis caching. All of that is ready to go out of the box, and it's still faster than those other options. So it's a great choice to support your Laravel applications. Now let me show you what it looks like. I've got a default Lumen installation here, and you can see that the folder structure is a little slimmer. There's no resources directory and no database directory out of the box, but we do have the familiar app HTTP routes. And you'll see we're just using a closure route by default, although you can use controllers with full dependency injection in Lumen. So you can have that power as well as you want. And of course, you can do middleware to protect your routes and do some filtering before the request enters your application. All right, so writing a Lumen route is just like writing a Laravel route. We can just return hello world right here. And we'll call that in our browser. And we get hello world. And of course, it's very fast. Now, what's great is let's go ahead and pull some data from the database, and we'll show you how easy this is to do in Lumen. All right, so if I go to my environment file, that's where you're going to configure your Lumen application. There's not a config directory with 7 or 8 files. You just have the one environment file, and you can use the .env library that Laravel uses, or you can load your environment variables through Nginx or through some other means on your production server. All right, so I've already got my database configured for Homestead, as you can see. So let's go ahead and make a table. And what's really cool about Lumen is there's also some artisan commands that ship with Lumen. So let me show you that. All right, now if I do PHP artisan list, you can see that I have some migration commands and then also the queue commands. So Lumen is also a very light queue worker and can even queue jobs itself, just like the full Laravel framework. Because queues are really such a big part of modern web applications, it makes sense for Lumen to be able to push and consume queue messages from itself. All right, so let's go ahead and make a migration just to make a simple table, and we'll get started. So PHP artisan. And first what we need to do is actually make that database folder because it's not there by default. So how I do that is PHP artisan make database. All right, and you'll see that created a database folder with a migrations directory and a seeds directory so we can seed our database. All right, I'm going to head back to my terminal, and now we're ready to make our migration. So let's create users table and give it that table name. All right, and that migration has been created. Now, what we will need to do is actually add that to our auto-loading setup. So we're going to class map that. And we can just put database here. All right, and then we need to regenerate our auto-loading files. All right, so we should be ready to do this migration. Let's go ahead and go into the file, and let's add a couple fields here. Maybe an email address, and of course our timestamps. That's really all we need for now for this demo. All right, we're almost ready to run this migration. The last thing we need to do is uncomment a few lines in our Bootstrap app file. So if I go to this file, I need to uncomment this .env load command. And what that does is actually load our environment variables into the environment. And of course, in your production server, you can do this any way you want via Nginx or some other means for loading environment variables. Now, I also need to uncomment this app with facades. That's going to make our migration be able to use the schema facade to create our table. All right, so once I have those two things uncommented, I should be ready to run my migration. So let's hop back over to the terminal. Now I need to be in my VM since that's where my database lives, is in Homestead. And I'm ready to run PHP artisan migrate, and we'll force that to run. All right, and so our user table has been created, so that's great. All right, now let's use Eloquent to actually put some data into the database. Now, the first thing I need to do is actually enable Eloquent because Eloquent is not enabled out of the box. So I can do that again in my Bootstrap app file. I'm just going to uncomment app with Eloquent, and that's going to bootstrap Eloquent when my application loads. All right, so now let's go to our routes file, and we'll just create a simple model right here just for this demo. All right, so let's create a user model, and that extends Illuminate, Database, Eloquent model. All right, and we don't need to set a table name because Eloquent can figure that out for us. Now let's create a new user and set the email address to taylor@laravel.com, and we will save that user and return all done. All right, and now let's go ahead and call this route and see if our user is created. All right, and it says all done. So let's check our database. You can see if I refresh this here, we have a users table, and there's our user right there in the database. So we're already using the power of Eloquent with Lumen. So let's go ahead and return some Eloquent data back out from this route. All right, if we look in our database, that is user ID 1. So let's go ahead and make another route with user ID. So we can accept a parameter here. And we're just going to return user find or fail ID. So really simple route to just get the user from the database and throw it back out on the page. So let's call that route. All right, user 1. And as you can see, just like Laravel, we get the JSON of the user that easy. It couldn't be simpler to start building APIs with Lumen and Eloquent, and you can even throw caching into the mix very easily. All right, so let's call a user that we don't have in the database. And you can see we are going to get a 404 exception, and you get the full nice Symfony error response when something goes wrong in Lumen. So you're fully up to speed on what happened in your application. All right, so that's how easy it is to get started with Lumen and Eloquent. And of course, we can use caching and even queue jobs with the power of this micro framework and have amazing speed.